email Britta, I think is who I have to talk to. So
What do they charge you for more sessions?
nobody knows. That's why I have to email Britta to find out.
I guess that's just part of their business model, but man, they sure did keep a lot of sessions from my students, and I don't think anybody got a rebate. Oh well.
Yeah,
I mean, you know what I mean. Can you blame them? Not really. It's like they did set everything up.
I'm sure they use the profits for something else.
Something wonderful. Okay, so I'm in here now, and we want to look where? Where was it that we were
It was
in a?
controllers or app controllers, uh, lessons controller.
Okay, all right. And oh, permit. Now I remember. This is the gist you sent me. I looked at.
Yes.
I did look at it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I realized I couldn't do much with it until I looked at the whole app, so I didn't go get that far. So the goal is that when somebody, I'm going to fire up a web server so we can actually play with it, and the goal is that we would that a
Let me
user
go
would only
back
be able to
here.
see a lesson that he's enrolled in, right?
Yes,
Okay.
but it had to be using the permissions specifically. I couldn't do it in routes or anything.
Okay. Now, when you say permissions, what do you mean? Like,
They said you had to authenticate or see ensure that only authenticated users are able to view the lessons page
okay.
by adding the device before action.
Oh, okay. Let me pull up that. Are you looking at the web page for this?
Yeah, the Flickster,
Can you
the
paste?
lesson.
Yeah. Can you paste that URL into the Hangout chat also? I know I could find it if I was diligent, but I'm not. If you can just paste it in there. Oh, there we go. Okay. Sorry, I'm just not that prepared. Okay, require users to be enrolled in. Here are a few tips. In a previous lesson, any student to enroll in the course. If a user attempts to view the detail page for a course they're not enrolled in, they should be redirected back to the course detail with an explanation that they must enroll. Okay. First, ensure only authenticated users by adding the before. Yep. The devise before action. Yep, I know what they mean there. And you put that in there. It's just authenticate user. And then
Yeah,
second, add a custom before
I did
action
that.
to ensure that the current user is enrolled in the course. Okay. Sweet.
Which I had my own custom before action, and the only difference between mine and Connor's was Connor had only and show at the very end,
Oh, okay.
except for the actual lines and Vim 3 through 0. That was different.
Oops.
Line 16 was almost the same.
These were different.
Yeah, those were different than his were.
Okay. Well, let's see here. I mean, it's funny. You can say only show. That's fine, but you only have one method in here called show. So, you,
Yeah,
it's like whatever. It's fine. I guess you're preparing for a future when you put more stuff in here. So here,
I have no idea.
require authorized for current lessons. So you're saying, um, if the current user enrolled in current lesson that section of course. Let's see here. Okay, I want to look at the user model. So a user has many courses, and if a user has a course, does that mean that they are in that course?
No, I don't think so. I think they have to be enrolled in.
Okay. Okay, so you have enrollments and you have enrolled courses through enrollments.
Although I may be wrong on that because I'm quite a bit lost when it comes to Flickster right now.
Okay. Well, like the way this is set up, is that something that came from the tutorial, or is that something that you
No,
originally?
that's all from the tutorial.
Okay. So for a user to have many courses, let me just jump up here to course creation. I remember that I actually went through a lot of this already. Let's see here, course creation. Ah, the users create courses, right? Yeah.
Yes,
So
as an administrator.
gotcha. So this having many courses, that's really like I have many courses that I've created. These are courses I own. I'm pretty sure. And then you have enrolled courses. These are courses that I'm participating in as a student, not as a course creator.
Yes.
Okay, that's right. And you got this device stuff. So enrolled in course, returned. Yeah, sure. I gotcha.
I don't know how, but okay.
No,
I don't
no,
know what you just got out of that.
no. It's more just like it's a little what in the world? It's a little bit vague. Like a user could have courses as a student, or he could have courses as a course creator, or he could have courses as a teacher or something. So just helping me understand what these associations really refer to. So it's helpful to have enrollments and enrolled courses. Okay. So basically, you have these tables in your system, and I mean, let's just look in here. I just want to make sure you understand what's happening here. Um, so, like,
Originally, I thought I had the redirect to correct because I had course path at course, but that was wrong. And the only thing that worked was his courses path, and I didn't understand like why that's the root page, like why that's the courses page instead of the course path.
hmm. Well, let's see if we can break it, because it seems like when someone tries to view a lesson. So let's see here. So you've got when you show a course, you're going to show, yeah, a bunch of lessons for the course. I see that there. So it's like, let's say there's a course on how to make bread or whatever. So like I click on that course, and it's like, here's all the lessons. And then when I click on a specific lesson to show the lesson, that's where you say, not until you are part of this
Yes,
course, right? And the question is, where should that guy be dumped back? Should he be dumped back at the list of all courses? That doesn't make sense. Or should he just be dumped back to the show page for that course that he's coming from, right?
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, so let's get that working. Um, if I fire up a browser and create, and hit it real quick, let me do that. Will it? Oh, I don't know. I haven't even done anything here. Hold on one second. Uh, no wonder my server didn't really. RecDB create. RecDB migrate. Come on. Come on. All right, let's try this again. I don't even think I need to restart that server. So if I go here, let me share my screen because you have no idea what I'm doing.
Nope.
So if I go here to the site, hello, it's taking a while. Oh, here it
Did you
comes.
start your server?
Yeah, I did. It's just, I like that's pretty. Okay, so I'm gonna sign up and just give my real information here. Do I have to confirm anything? No, great. I'm already in here. So see all
Nope.
courses. There's no courses, I'm sure. No, there is one. No, there isn't.
That's the title.
Oh, okay. Are you into aquaponics? I think aquaponics is one of the coolest things.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see all courses. Okay, there's no courses. How can I create a course? Do I have to have a special status? Um,
No. Go scroll down to the bottom. This is something I thought was weird.
oh, teacher
Teach
course.
a course.
All right. You
They
betcha.
didn't. That's the only spot where they wanted you to be able to create a course.
All right. Okay, so I'm just gonna create a course here and add a new section. Um, Whatever. So add another section. Okay, and then these are the lessons, and I think we're in good shape. Add a lesson. I gotta get back. We probably don't want. Oh, every section has a lesson.
Yes.
All right. So let me add one lesson.
And you can add several lessons. And then you have to log in as someone else to look at the lessons as a student.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so I added 2 lessons there, and now I'm going to open up an incognito window and log in as a totally different person. And let's see what we can get to here. Sign up. Someone. Okay, whoops. So now I'm in here. Welcome. And where are all these courses? Let's go find them. There it is, Sushi for Dummies. So I click on it, $5, and this is a lesson. So when I click on this, it should say the goal, right, was that it would say, please enroll in the course to view the lesson. So here I go.
Yep.
Please enroll in the course to view lessons. But it kicks me all the way out to the front page of the courses instead of, we really just want to come back here, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's solve that problem first, okay? So one thing we can do is, let's just make sure that we have an understanding of our routes and stuff like that. So I'm going to go look at the routes file. And yeah, so they're using resources here, which I think is that something that you and I got into, or was that me and Connor?
We did a little bit,
Okay.
but it was late, and I was definitely on overload.
All right. So they have resources here, and they even have nested resources, which is good. This is kind of a cool thing to do. And so,
I just don't understand what they're all doing.
yeah. Well, I'll do a rake routes in a minute, and then it'll spit out tons of stuff, and we can see. But basically, like for the sake of reasoning about your application, you can define resources in the routes file, like, oh, we're going to have courses, lessons, instructors, sections, and all this stuff. And then Rails will generate a bunch of routes to make it easy to refer to those entities in the system. And nested resources come into play when you have, like, it's kind of just how it sounds. Like you might have a resource that really does not exist on its own. It's only subsidiary to something else. For example, there's no sections without a course somewhere. No section doesn't just float around your system as a section. It's always going to be connected to a course, right?
Yes.
And the same thing applies to lessons, I think, is every lesson is going to be connected to a section and maybe even to a course. It's just up to you. So when you start nesting resources like they're doing here, see here, it's like you have a section, and then indented beneath it is a lesson. Sorry, that highlighting looks really gross. So it's a lot to wrap your head around. Let's just take a look at it. So if I run rake routes, it's going to spit out a ton of very similar looking routes. Look at all those.
See, the reason why I chose originally course path is because you have, or at course is because you have courses / ID, and I thought it would have to have the ID of the student, and it would take you back to the lessons that they were trying to enroll in.
Yeah. Yeah, you're on the right track there. So if you look in here, you've got, I can't really show you, but like about 10 lines above my cursor, see where it has the path or the prefix is just the word course, and then there's like two blank lines beneath it.
Yes,
Okay.
that's the one I was thinking of.
Yeah, so that means that in your system, in your Rails app, you should be able to say course path and pass it an ID. And now you're not passing it the ID of a user, you're passing it the ID of a course. And that is if you say course path and you pass it an ID, Rails should generate a working route, working URL from that. So let's go back
So,
to see why it wasn't working.
what's the difference between where course is and 2 lines down where it's blank?
Um,
They're both courses show.
okay. Huh. You know what? What's going on here? Courses. I don't know why that's in there twice, to be honest. It's like the exact same thing. But I'm gonna look in
That's
your
what I thought.
I'm gonna look in your routes file. It might be here it is. Oh, it's because look, this line is here and the exact same line is here. And you just don't need
Oh,
both of those, so I'm going to take that one out, and now let's go back and look at your routes again. Let me clear it first. So now that's much more sensible and less confusing, right? That's
yes.
funny. I didn't even know that the routes file would let you duplicate routes like that. I've never seen that before. Anyway, let's see if we can get that redirect working the right way, right? Because let's see if this
Like,
is.
how do you know? How do you know which one to choose to get to the page you want?
Oh, how do you know like which one of these routes?
Like, I know I want to go back to the lessons page that the student was already on.
Okay.
So looking at the routes, how do I pick the correct one?
Oh yeah. I see. Well, because I'm going back to my web browser now, because really, well, like here we are about to try to. I'm clicking on this lesson, and it says please enroll in the course to view the lessons, and you can kind of look up here in the URL, and you can say, okay, I am on the show page for courses. I can tell because there's the ID, and it's /courses.
It says courses.
It says courses. It wouldn't say, even though it's one, even though you're showing one course, it's going to be plural. That's like a Rails convention. So if you look in here at courses show, which is about, go all the way to the right, furthest right column, about 9 lines up, and you see courses show, and it's like, okay, that's where I want to get back to. And then you go over to the left and you realize, okay, it's just course path, and I have to pass it an ID because in the URI you see that parameter there, that colon ID.
Yes.
So you're saying
What
Oh, go ahead.
What is that ID?
Oh,
Because initially I had course path parent at course because I thought at course carried the ID, but it wasn't working.
well, the ID needs to be the ID of the course, and it could be at course. It just let's go look and see. You just have to make sure that's out there somewhere. So let's see here. Lessons controller. I see.
What are you looking at?
Okay, so you were doing something like this, right? Let me just guess. You were doing something like redirect to course path, and you did something like that, right?
Yes, that is exactly what I did.
Yeah, and that's I understand what you're doing there, because I mean, in a sense, you're on the right track. The only problem is that you're basically referring to this course right here that doesn't exist in this controller at this point. Like the controller is basically passing nil because the controller doesn't know about this course. Now, there's a lot of things you can do. Basically, you just have to find a way to get some reference to the current course for this lesson. So here's the easiest way to do it. Here, let's look at the lessons. Doesn't every lesson belongs to a section and every section belongs to a course? Okay, so let me go back here. So one way that is a little bit cheesy is to do this. You can say, oh, you're already doing it. Okay, look, you see here where it says, is the current user enrolled in this? You see this here?
That is all new, and I have no idea how Connor arrived at that.
Oh, okay. All right. So
I didn't even have anything close to that.
all right, so we'll do it like this. He split all this stuff into a helper method and everything. So let's just start over and write our own. Okay, so
helper method's mine.
Oh, it is? Okay, so because it's not bad. Yeah, the helper method's yours.
Well, I shouldn't say mine. The helper method's the walkthroughs.
Yeah. You basically just need to do something like this, like number one, what lesson is this? You got to find that out. Number two, what course is this lesson part of? Number three, or whatever is the current user enrolled in this course? And then number four, if not, send him or her. Since I'm recording this, I'm going to be PC. Send him or her back to the course page. Right? Isn't that what we want to do?
Yes.
Okay. So let's start with number one. What lesson is this? And for that, you have your helper method here. Current lesson. It's fine to use that. Let's just, and it works. I can tell that it's written correctly. So we'll say, but it might help a little bit. Let me just comment this out, and we'll just come at this in a totally new way, okay? Just to make it really explicit, because what I like to do is I like to do things step by step. It's possible in Ruby to be like super clever and do tons of stuff on one line, and people just love that, and I love it too. But when you're just getting started, you want to be really explicit, and then later you can kind of break it apart into more elegant pieces. But for now, let's just do number one. So what lesson is this? So I'm going to use your helper method here, and I'll say, the current lesson is I'm just going to copy what you already did because it's good. The current lesson is that. Okay, so that's number one. Now we know what the current lesson is, right? Because your link on the web is going to
grab whatever ID of the person that's there.
It's going to grab the ID of the lesson, because the ID of the lesson is going to be in the link. Look, if we go back here and I hover over hook, you see on the bottom, you can barely see on my screen, it says lessons/2.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And over here under bait, lesson/1, and that's your that's because you're saying lesson path probably, and you're passing it a lesson. That's what Rails routing is all about. They're building those links for you, and the ID is being passed as part of the URL. So you can depend on that. It's an assumption you can make that that's coming in. So that's number one. Number one is done. Okay, number two, what course is this lesson part of? And so we can say uh, current course, or you know what? I am a maniac when it comes to naming things because I feel like I'm like a writer at heart. You know what I mean? I'm not a computer person. So I will actually name things like this course for this lesson. Just super explicit so that you never be confused
Okay.
about what we're saying. And then how do we get that? Well, you're kind of already. Well, maybe I'll stop and. How would we find the course for this lesson?
That's what I don't know.
Okay.
I would assume something like course.find, but it doesn't know what course is.
Yeah. Well, in one of the nice things about Rails is they have this thing called associations, active record associations. So if we go look at lesson here, it says your lesson belongs to a section. And so I don't know if you just inherited this whole system or if you had to write the migrations for it or what. But what it
I
means,
did, but I just followed a guide.
yeah,
So
it's like magic spells, right? So what that means is like when let's say that you somewhere you got a lesson somehow, um, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like this, you had some param and you got a lesson, okay, like we just did. And so you have this entity, but because of this association you've set up behind the scenes, if you want to find the section that this lesson belongs to, all you have to do really is just type that. Type that, and you're there. You actually, that's how you refer to
lesson
it.
dot section.
Lesson dot section. That's kind of what an association is. It produces a very easy way to find the records in the system that are related to one another. Without that, you would probably have to do something like find me all the sections where lesson ID is equal to lesson.id. That kind of would do the same thing. Does that make sense?
But I don't have any belongs to in that controller.
Yeah, but you don't need it because the lesson. You're basically, when you define what a lesson is, you define relationships between that lesson and the other entities in the system. And so just by saying that a lesson belongs to section up here, you're saying, hey, anytime that you come across a lesson or you find a lesson in the system and you're curious about what section it's part of, you can get to his section. You can get that lesson section just by typing lesson dot section. So that's how you find it. And what's cool is they call it chaining. You can chain these associations together, and actually you could type something here that's related to all the associations on section. Anyway, let's go back here to here. So like maybe instead of course, we'll say, how do we find the current section? Well, it's this easy. We just do current lesson dot section. Man, what is wrong with me? And now we know the section, which is not really what we're after yet. But how do you think we can find the course?
Dot course.
Yep. Well, it's like, let's go check out section. It's
So
like
the course belongs to a section.
Yep. So then it's like, oh, well, that's great because now we can do, current course is equal to, or whatever I wanted to say. What did I call it? Course for this lesson is equal to current section dot course. You can put all this together. And so that's number 2. And since you can actually chain these together, you can kind of do this. Oops. Oops. Let me see.
Oh, write it all and just using dots.
Yep. Now, that's kind of like bad manners in Rails land. It kind of violates a principle to have these really long chains. And down the road you want to maybe not do this that much, but for now, it's fine. It's fine. It's just the main thing is you kind of understand what we're doing. We can kind of go through. You can even do like stuff like this. This is kind of cool. Like if I go look at course, look, a course has many enrollments, or course has a user, the person who created the course. So I can do so I could say course author is this person. Isn't that cool? I mean, it's just so easy. So you could be anywhere in your controller or even in a view, and you can kind of reach into all these relationships and pull out the information you need. So just think about it like it's actually a likelihood that I would be showing a course or showing a lesson, a page that shows a lesson, and maybe somewhere on the page I would want to show who wrote the course. And all I would have to do is say current lesson.section.course.user.name or something. Now again, that's not something you would really do. There's a better way to get at that information, but that's what associations let you do. Okay, so then now we're here. Number 3, is this user enrolled in this course? I'm going to delete this line here because we don't need it. And so you've got this thing here. So go ahead, James.
What that line actually says then, the if not current user enrolled in, and then in the parentheses is where is what the user should be enrolled in.
Yeah. So you have this method called enrolled in defined on the user model. Let's go look at that. So here's this method you've written or whatever they wrote is called enrolled in.
Yeah.
And so if on any user in the system you can say user.enrolled in and then you pass it a course and it'll return true or false. Like, yeah, he's in this course, or no, he's not enrolled in this course. So
if it returns false, then it goes on to redirect to course's path.
Right. It's like if it returns false, then it's like, sorry, buddy, you're not allowed to go any further. So we can take this if statement that you wrote, or whoever wrote, and there's nothing wrong with it. If not current user enrolled in. The only thing I would change here is because we've got this nice variable that we've created that has a little more friendly.
You can use course for this lesson.
Yeah, and it just reads better, doesn't it? Like now when you come across this, you're not like, what am I doing here? This is something I do obsessively.
Why doesn't that have to be an instance variable?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. And you wouldn't believe how long I did Ruby on Rails programming without really knowing the difference between an instance variable. It's amazing how far you can go without knowing anything about that. Which is, but I'll tell you why it doesn't. It doesn't hurt if you make it one, but it might confuse people because usually when you make something an instance variable, there's a reason for it, and if you're not following through on that reason, it's confusing. So let me just finish this. Let's see. If the current user is not enrolled in the course of this lesson, then what do? We want to redirect with this alert.
Which I initially had flash alert, but he said you didn't have to put flash in there.
Yeah. I don't really know that much about that.
Okay.
But we can dig into that.
The alert works. That's all that matters.
Yeah. Well, you want to understand it too. Okay. So we're back. You have this helper method for the current lesson. This will probably come in handy. I see what they're doing now.
I may be wrong. I may have wrote that based on the helper method for the current course.
Well, anyway, okay, I'll just delete it. We can always put it back. So now you have this method, and let's just look at it. because we just want to make it as clear as possible so that when you come back and you're trying to reason about what's happening, you can say, okay, so it's like, okay, what is the current lesson? It's this. You don't want to do or equals, just what is the current lesson? What's the course for this lesson? Is the user enrolled in that course? Oh, he's not, then let's bounce him back out. Oh, and so here's the question is like, see this course path, and what do you need to pass to the course path? You need to pass the ID of a course, right?
Yes.
So where can we get that information now based on, like, is there a way, do we have access to the current course in this little block of code?
We do not.
No, we do. Look,
Not in the.
it's right there.
Oh, well,
It's,
the dot course, yes.
well, I mean, this is the course for this lesson. I mean, so we have it.
Because of the dot section dot course,
Yeah.
it's in the variable course for this lesson.
Right. And so when you are trying to redirect to some path and you need to pass it a course, it doesn't have to be named course or at course. It just needs to be a course. So, it, you can change this just to say,
So when I put course path and then in parens course for this lesson, all that is inside the parens is just where I want it redirected to, essentially.
yeah, basically you just need to pass course path an ID. That's kind of what it's expecting, a number. So like that really is more explicit. Like, let's give it the ID for this course. Every course in the system has a unique ID that is unique to it. Rails is smart enough. If you don't say .id and you just pass it an object, it's going to look for the ID. It's going to kind of inspect it and try to find that. So either one is fine. But you could pass, I mean, if we wanted to, and you could just pass like a number. It's fine. I mean, that would create a path.
But I prefer not to do hard-coded IDs, right?
Definitely not. But what you want to do here is realize, like, when we come into this lesson, we're only really coming in with one piece of information, and that is the lesson ID. And so we can find the lesson using the lesson ID, and then from there you can inspect a lot of different things, because the lesson is going to be related to a section, and that section is going to be related to a course. And then if you want to kick the guy out, you want to send him back to the course, and it's like, oh, how am I going to get that? I don't know what course he's part of. And it's like, well, yes, you do. You do know, because we had to find the course to check to see if he was enrolled. And now that we know he's not, we'll just send him back to that course. Let's just see if this works. Okay, so I'm jumping to the browser now.
Go for it.
And if I did it right, or we did it right, I should say, then if we click hook, it should bounce us right back here. Yeah, see, that's much better experience. Please enroll in the course. Please enroll in the course. And
it makes more sense.
Yeah, like I didn't do anything wrong. Why are you kicking me back out to the very beginning? I just so. Okay, so let's talk about instance variables. The way that the main difference between a variable like, okay, well let's do this. Okay, instead of course for this lesson, I'm just going to call it. Oops, I'm just going to call it a course. Even though it's, let's just do that just so we can kind of make it more familiar. Okay, and often in controllers you see this, right? Right?
Yes.
What in the world did I just do? Help! Sorry.
That I can't answer. You're the teacher.
No, I did some weird Vim thing. Let me get back in there. Oh gosh. Here we are. All right, so Oh boy. Okay, so what's the difference between an instance variable and, what's the difference between this and this? Do you know? Okay.
I know an instance variable you can call it within the controller, but not outside of.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But that's
That's
like the best explanation I have.
yeah. That's more or less correct. So like you're going to be in this controller, and you're probably going to have a bunch of things, like show all the lessons and different kinds of methods, right? Like to create stuff and destroy stuff and edit stuff.
Yeah.
Controllers always end up looking like that, and so um, it's it's a very tightly focused set of responsibilities within this class, and because of that, you don't want to be burdened with needing to pass around to every, you know, you don't want to have to write methods where you have to always be passing these parameters around. You know what I mean? Because not course, sorry, like a lesson. If you're trying to show a lesson.
Okay.
So to help with that, what an instance variable is, which is this thing with that little at sign in front of it, is once you have an instance variable set, like you might, in your show you might do this. Like once you've done that, okay, then two basic things are a result. Okay, the first is that when you go to your view, like you're going to have a show view, which is here. When you go in there, you'll be able to refer to this lesson in here. It means in here you can do stuff like lesson. You can refer to it. You can print stuff out. You can say lesson.
But I could not if it was not an instance variable.
You definitely could not. It just wouldn't be. The view would say, we've never heard of that. Well, what is that? Because only the instance variable is going to make it into your view.
So it was the opposite of what I was saying.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Oh, well.
But okay.
Well, anyway, so that's kind of like the 90% of how instance variables are valuable in controllers is like, if you want this information to be available in your view, then you better put an @ sign in front of it. And then when you are in your view and messing with your ERB, you can refer to it. And that's great. And oh man. So if you said like if you just had that and you went to your view and you started referring to lesson, it would say, we don't know what you're talking about. So that's why let me see if there's another controller here that I can look at. No.
Not really. There's not much.
Oh, here's one. Okay, so like the controller that shows your courses, right? So here's your index, and then you assign all the courses to this instance variable called courses. Yep. So if we go look at the view, you can just say courses.each2, blah, 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 and just spit out all this stuff related to each course. You can just assume that variable exists because we created it in our controller, and then in the view we expect that thing exists, right? So here's a course, and now I'm in the show view, and I'm just going to spit out its title. I don't have to do anything to get it. It just came into the view from the controller. Does that make sense?
But I cannot do that from another controller. So if I went to the lessons controller and called @course, is it calling the @course from this controller?
Well, like if you were in the why do I keep doing that? If you were in the lessons controller, you mean you did this?
Yes.
Well, you can create an instance variable called course here, but what you have to realize is like every time you're in one of these methods in the controller, you're not coming in with any. It's like every piece of data that you want to manipulate or have handy, you have to kind of go out and get it in every single method. So like there is no like global course that exists in your system that you can just refer to. you always would have to like look in the courses controller. Like, when they want to show a course, every time they come into show, they go out and they grab it out of the database right there. And so you can do that here. You just.
But I have to do that again if I want to do the same thing in a different controller.
Yep. Every time you want it, you have to go out and get it. Or you can just do this. See, like if I'm like already here, I might do course equals lesson dot section dot course. Same thing, right?
Yes.
And if I did that, then in my show view for lessons, I can refer to course if I want to, because look, I instantiated it in my controller before I went to the view.
So the views are only hooked up with one of the controllers, not multiple.
Yeah. I mean, you can.
When I said I didn't understand the structure of any of this, I meant it.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, generally, I mean, there's always these exceptions. Like you can create kind of these generic views that many controllers would use and render, but generally, yes, generally at the level that you're at, for every controller, there's going to be views that are unique to that controller, specific to that controller. So like, let's go look at those. So you have your views folder, and there's a courses folder in here that's going to hold all your course views. So there they are, we index and show. And so why are they there? Well, because the courses controller has an index action and a show action, and so it's got these two views. And then if we look at lessons, there's only show here. Why is that? Well, let's go look at the controller. Because there's only one, despite this garbage that I put in here, let me get rid of that. There's only one, you really only have one action in here, one method. So there's like this interesting like mapping across your Rails project where you're going to have the controller that is kind of managing the web request to look at this resource, and then every method in that controller that corresponds to a view is going to have one view. It's just part of the framework. You have to kind of absorb, and I don't know if
it's a completely different way than how I've been thinking about it.
Yeah. At first it's like, man, it seems like that's a lot of tiny files. Why can't they just put everything in one place? But eventually you start to embrace it and sort of drink the Kool-Aid to the very bottom, and it's really helpful. It really makes things work fast.
I'd say I kind of appreciate that not everything is in one file, because that's one of the things I hated about JavaScript and learning some of that stuff is everything was in one file and you had to hard code links and everything else.
Yeah.
And it just got insanely huge and it took forever to find stuff.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. So I'm going to...
Not that I've had that much experience in JavaScript.
Well, so coming back to this matter of instance variables, basically the reason why we don't need in this, this method is basically just, sorry, this method is basically just checking on whether you are allowed to go any further. And so it's not, this method is not connected to a view, is what I'm saying. And because it's not, you don't really need to instantiate these instance variables because they're not going to be needed in the view. Okay, now that's the 90%.
So is that why they're under private? I've got to go.
Okay,
somebody
no
is
problem.
banging on my door like they're going to die. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Never mind.
Oh.
That was the UPS guy. I thought someone was going to die.
Maybe he was delivering something valuable and didn't want to just leave it there.
All right, where were we?
Well, the other thing with instance variables is that once you instantiate one, which is a fancy way of saying create one, like what were we doing in here? Yeah, like if we do this, lesson.find. You see, let's say you have something like this.
Yes. So we can call that within our view of
Yep.
show.
Yep. And that's like 90% of why, at this level of Rails, you're creating these instance variables. The other, I guess, benefit of using, of instantiating this instance variable is you technically can, if you have another method, like, okay, like let's say we had a method here like, like email
Index.
Lesson creator, something like that.
Okay.
This is not really the way I would do it, okay, but I'm just trying to think of something you would want to do. And you would want to, like, this is pseudocode, okay? You just want to send an email to the lesson owner. Let's just pretend that all of that would work, okay?
Sure.
And so let's say that every time you show a lesson, you want to send an email to the guy who created it and say, hey, someone looked at your lesson. That would be a terrible thing to do, but this is just a contrived example. Okay, well, so we would want to put this method in here like this, and we would pass it this lesson, right, as a parameter. You would have to say
what lesson to send.
Right. So does this make sense to you? Like,
yes.
Here's a method with one parameter, the lesson, and then within, I'm sending an email to the lesson owner. Does that make sense? And so when you call the method, I have to pass it this parameter because it's expecting this parameter. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So the value of instance variables is once you've created one in your controller or in your class, this is true of any class, not just controllers, but once you've created that instance variable, you can refer to it in any method in the class without needing to pass it around as a parameter. So you can do stuff like this. I don't need to do that. And I don't need to pass this parameter. All I need to do is this. Okay? Does that make sense? So like even though this method doesn't have any variables passed into it, it doesn't have any context, because lesson is an instance variable, it is available to every method in this class. It's a little bit of an oversimplification, but that's
that does not make
sense.
sense.
It doesn't make sense? Okay.
Not even close.
Well,
so why I got that before your variable was passing which lesson.
Yeah, like,
and now you added at to lesson.owner, but I don't see an ID.
Yeah. Well, let's forget about owner. That's maybe confusing a little bit. Okay, but let's say, oh, no. Instead of email, let's say we have a method that's like mark lesson as viewed or something like that. Okay, so
all right,
there we go. And we'll just do like,
I'm not trying to be difficult, I promise.
No. It's no problem because
it's cool that you're even actually trying to explain this. The other guy didn't.
Well, it's just that usually, like the way that procedural languages work. Well, I mean, it's just a very common way to approach problems is when you define a function or a block of code or a method or whatever you call it, you often will pass it parameters, which are the context into which that code needs to, upon which that code needs to operate. So, like, if you
want to pass a parameter for 2 + 2, then you have to have a placeholder for 2 + 2.
Exactly, right? Or if you have a lesson called add X and Y, you got to pass in X and Y, right?
Yeah.
So if we have a method called mark lesson as viewed, it's like, well, what lesson do we need to mark? And so this is fine to do this. Um,
And that I understand.
okay, so like this would like work, right? That would work. There's nothing wrong with this. Uh, it's just that when you make lesson an instance variable, like we do here, that gives you the freedom to treat it as a global variable, pretty much, in this class. Do you know what a global variable means? It means like it's
You can use it
something.
across everything.
It's like everybody knows about it and everybody can get to it, and you don't need to pass it around. It's just like everybody's got it. So you can do stuff like this: mark lesson as viewed, and I don't need to say which lesson I'm talking about because we're only dealing with one lesson at a time in this class, and I don't need parameters anymore. And now all I have to do in here is refer to it that way. You know, you know
Kind
what?
of get it.
Well,
I may have to think about that one for a while.
you know what, James? It's honestly not important right now. The main thing is to get that if you want access to information in your views, you need to store that information in instance variables. And if you don't need access, it doesn't make sense to put it in instant variables. It's not really going to hurt you.
That much I can remember. I can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. So
I apologize if I hit overload easily, but I code all day, every day, and I feel like a parrot at this point. So my brain is always like a brick wall.
no, you know, honestly, a lot of the frustration that people experience coding is just not having someone to really help them with fundamental concepts, you know, in the beginning. And you know, like every time we're together, we'll cover some stuff, and I hope that when you're going through these tutorials, and you know, maybe you'll go back to the beginning and go through them again, and now when you encounter certain things, you'll be like, oh, now I know
Yeah.
why they're doing this, and so I can focus on this other thing that's, you know, and so you're not tripped up by these syntactical mysteries that really have simple explanations if there's just someone to tell you about it.
That was originally my plan, was to go back through because they're supposed to build time in for that to redo lessons, but I'm like 5 weeks behind, so I haven't had time yet. But I want to redo just to see how much I've learned and catch things and hopefully figure out more along the way of what just seemed like magic before.
Yeah, and you will. Some of the stuff that just used to terrify me, I mean, because I wish I never had any mentors until like 3 years ago, which is poor me. But I learned everything from books and I came from this background which was extremely sloppy in terms of coding practice. And I built a huge Ruby on Rails app that is still in use today. Then it didn't even use the routes file at all because I didn't know what it I didn't know I didn't understand what was going on in there, and so I just was like, forget that. And it didn't use migrations. I would just edit the database by hand, and when I tell people this, they're like, that's not even possible to do that with Rails. And I'm like, oh, it's possible. If you're if you're scared enough and dumb enough to, you know, ignore what's out there. But eventually, you know, I conquered all those things, and the more you understand them, the more it's very empowering because you can do things quickly and with a good understanding of why.
I'll get there.
Yeah, you will get there. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Hey, I don't know if that was an hour or not. It was like a little, maybe more or less. I don't know, but I do need to stop. And I don't know if we really covered what you were interested in covering either. Sorry.
You did. I understand why we used what we did now, and I'm going to go back and instead of copying yours, I'm going to duplicate. Like I'm going to redo it myself.
Okay, good.
So I know.
Yeah. Well, let me stop the recording, and I'll get it uploaded for you, and that way you can refer to it if you need to. And I think that might be helpful.